what it is that we're delivering. So we can be prone to plosives in all those situations. But good mic technique, first of all, regardless of the situation, certainly does help with that. Having a pop filter, in front of the microphone is certainly helpful with that too. Yeah. And how you have it placed, certainly helpful with that. Smile through the plosive, through the P's. That is a pretty good trick. That when you're when you're actually doing your voiceover stuff, if you just smile a little bit through the P, then it becomes less powerful. So that's a good trick you can do, and just be conscious of it. If you're, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, right? It's you gotta be kind of conscious of the P's, so that that you're not giving them as much power as the rest. And actually, because they are hard consonants anyway, you can afford to give them less power, and they will be okay. Yeah, they'll sit there just fine.
And this kind of cycles back to placement too. Getting that mic out of the direct line of what's coming out of your lips can really help with plosives a lot too. And there's a little bit of processing that can go into it too, with things like high pass filters that are on many preamps, and I keep them engaged on both of my preamps all the time, because I can't stand plosives, and I got a fat bottom lip, so I'm genetically wired to have plosives.
Right. Now that's something I've never heard.
That's right.
Well, actually, this is a good opportunity to speak about this. What the hell are all the switches on the mics? What do they do?
Well, certainly not all mics have switches, but the ones that do often, for instance, like a U87 has different polar patterns, which you don't really need to be switching from back and forth. So cardioid is mostly what we're using in voiceover. Now, of course, back in the day, eons ago, it seems like now, when we would have two talent in the same booth speaking, doing a dialogue session together or something like that, then having a figure 8 polar pattern was great, because they could work together and work off of each other and see each other as they were doing their thing. But nobody's doing that anymore. It's very rare that anybody from home would ever have another talent in their booth with them. So, we don't need those multiple polar patterns on our mics anymore. Other things are pads, which basically reduces the power of the microphone. So in other words, if it's minus 10 dB, or just says minus 10, then it's already attenuating that sound, that volume, by 10 decibels, so that you can be louder without distorting the microphone. And then there's roll-off switches for bass roll-off, which Emmett just mentioned. What else? What else would be on there?
That's pretty much it,
I'm trying to think.
There's also on a few mics, like the Shure SM7, there's a little presence boost switch. So you have a few that have a little more contour to them. The RE27ND has a few of those contour switches. I can't think of any condensers off the top of my head that have that option, but there are a few dynamics where you can kind of dial in the sound a little more on the mic. In my experience, in every case I've ever tested, it sounds better to do that either at the preamp level or in the post level than it does to use those switches on the mic.
Right. I agree.
Well, following on from that, Emma, I'd like you to talk now a little bit about the pairing and the sort of dance that a microphone and a preamp does with each other. Like, why would you choose a certain preamp with a certain microphone, and how does that affect the eventual sound?
I'm actually gonna back up and go a little bit more basic than that for what a preamp actually is at its core level, which is just simply a device that takes the extremely low signal coming from a microphone and brings it up to a more usable level so we can work with it. In the most simple terms, that's what it's doing. In the process of doing that, every preamp has some impact on the sound. And I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here, because there's this constant debate over which is more important, the microphone or the preamp, and a lot of people will say the preamp is more important. The reason where that line of thinking comes from is if you have half a dozen microphones and you get one really good preamp, you have improved all of those microphones.
Right.
Whereas if you buy one more microphone, you're just going to add one more sound. So that's where the line of thinking, where people have gotten this idea that the preamp is more important. I would say the opposite is true with voiceover, that the mic is the most important component, followed by the preamp, because it's all about the character, and generally you're not going to have a zillion sources that you're going to have to try and mic. You're going to have one voice that you're going to be working with. Anyhow, into your question, the dance that they do, there's a lot that goes into it, but different preamps have different voicings, just like different mics have different voicings. And they're not always obvious. Some are, like the Neve 1073. It's got a certain sound to it. You know that whatever you plug into it is going to take on that Neve sound, but most of them are much more subtle than that. Yeah. And some preamps have a lot of color, a lot of character to them. Some are ultra transparent, and there's a whole wide range in between. And it's a matter of largely just finding what you like. Even the cheapest preamps now are pretty good. If you go in and buy a $100 interface, a $100 Steinberg interface, the preamps in that are not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all, actually. I recommend the Steinberg a lot. I think to me, the preamps are better than the Focusrite, for instance, in this comparably priced model. I agree. You can get really nice preamps that'll work just fine on voice alone, for sure.
It used to be back a couple decades ago, maybe the 90s or so, there was a wide difference between professional grade preamps and low-end kind of plug-and-play preamps. And Mackie sort of changed the game on that because they were able to come up with a really solid-sounding preamp for a fraction of the cost of higher-end boutique preamps, and everyone has followed suit since then, and that technology has only gotten better and cheaper.